Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Averill Park School Board of Education meeting on tonight, Monday, February 28th, 2022. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Liberty.
justice for all. Thank you. And we will move into our superintendent's report.
All right, good evening. A few things to share with the board tonight. First of all, I congratulate all the winter sports teams for very successful seasons on the court and their matches and all their different areas, both on the court and off the court. A very successful year, and very proud of our student athletes, the way they competed, the way they represented ourselves and the district. I want to encourage the community to come. We have one team still playing, and that's our girls varsity basketball team. They play Wednesday night in the Class A semifinals. It's at Hudson Valley, so it's nice and local. Game time is 7:30, so just want to promote that. It's our last winter sport event. They have the #1 seed in the Class A. So. The SEL Parent Night, we talked about that at one point here. We are moving forward with that. The social emotional learning parent night is going to come up. We have the 2 SEL coordinators. They're going to lead it. It's very early in our planning process, but we will get that out to you, show the results of the recent survey that was conducted, and provide parents with some resources they can use to support the SEL needs at home. Something we want to make sure we keep talking about is we are looking to offer universal pre-K. So if you remember, this is the first year the district has been eligible for federal funding, and we are looking to get that going now. We have the RFP, the request for proposal out. Matt's actually the one kind of overseeing that for us. So again, it's a federally funded program. We have up to 59 full-day slots that are available for 4-year-olds. The way that we're doing it is using community-based organizations that can host the program. So proposals got to be submitted. The funding essentially goes through the district. That's how it works. There's no cost to the district or to the taxpayers. It's state funded, federally funded going down the state to us that we can use. And the way that we're going to do it is to use current community groups or other groups that apply for the RFP. And we have up to 59 spots. It's a per pupil basis, so our allocation would allow for that. So it's no cost to us, and something that we're going to partner with the community on and provide that that service to our 4-year-old pre-K population. And there we go. Thanks, Matt. So as you know, we pulled the resolution from tonight's meeting. We announced that we're not going to extend the mandate. Met with the administrative team today as we begin to discuss and prepare for Wednesday. The principals reported positive stuff. The atmosphere was very good in their buildings. They felt that people are in general looking very forward to Wednesday. Some of the things we've been kind of talking through. We're going to have our principals all communicate directly with students and staff tomorrow regarding the mask being optional. That's going to be done by each principal. Each principal's got their own style, their own buildings, different levels. But we're going to really focus on a consistent theme of tolerance and respect for each other, and the choices each person is making are very personal, and that we're going to respect whether someone is or is not wearing a mask, and make sure that we're handling ourselves properly. Quite honestly, we have really good students, and they are well behaved, and they're respectful, and they're tolerant, and they're open-minded. I'm sure our students will rise to the occasion like they have countless times. So it's something that we're looking to really message in a positive manner with our student body. We're going to maintain our other layered mitigation strategies right now. Obviously, the social distancing, increased ventilation. We want to make sure we're still doing the other things that we can, and make sure we kind of go slowly, one thing at a time. We do have that SEL concern, right, for students who may be feeling stressed due to this transition. We realize any transition for students can be stressful, and everyone's kind of coming with their own perceptions and realities. So we're going to make sure that our support staff is ready and available to support kids as needed. PPE wise, we have the K95 masks, we have a supply of that, we still have plenty available. So those will be available for any student or employee who wants one, make sure those are available. We talked through seating charts, and we're not going to do anything in terms of sections from masked or unmasked or anything like that. And as of late this afternoon, about 4:30 when I last checked in, we've not received any requests for students to go virtual due to the mandate ending. So we're keeping an eye on that to see whether or not we have a large number of requests, or any number of requests for that matter, of students who are looking to switch to a virtual program. We don't have one. We had an offer over the summer, and then we made some accommodations based on some of the COVID stuff. The kids were in quarantine. So as of right now, we don't have an actual virtual program, but of course, we'll look into what we can do to service our kids through a variety of means. But right now, the demand is literally at zero. So at this point, just monitoring it. So that's where we are. The administrative team was great as always. And we feel like we're in a good spot to begin this on Wednesday and make this work for everybody. So that concludes the report. And Matt can hit the video for us. We'll have our That's this meeting's video. Thanks again to Brian, as always, for doing a great job with that. And Matt for his assist there on the technology. And with that, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 3 on our agenda, public comment for topics limited to items on this evening's agenda. And I have no issues at this time. So we will keep moving. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes of February 7th, 2022 meeting. Megan, seconded by Peter. Discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And I'm looking for a motion to approve items number 5 through 7 to cover the business, personnel, and special education consent agenda items. Motion by Ann, seconded by Megan. Discussion. Megan, did you have something?
Yeah, only just to recognize our district employees who are retiring and wishing them all the best in their retirement. Thank them for the service.
Absolutely. That's Jennifer Yost after 25 years. And we also wanted to acknowledge that Joanne Goodermoth has served 25 years with the district before she retired. So absolutely we wish them the best in their retirement. I also wanted to thank the OPB Drama Club for their donation. Is there any other discussion on those consent agenda items? Okay, hearing none, we'll call to a vote. All those in favor? Passes unanimously, thank you. Moving right along to action items under agenda item 8. We have 4. The first, we would need a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement by and between the Averill Park Central School District and the Averill Park Teachers Association regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. Megan, and seconded, discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor? Passes unanimously, thank you. 8B is to approve the memorandum of agreement by and between the Averill Park Central School District and the Averill Park Teachers Association regarding the early payout of retirees for McGill. And seconded by Megan. Discussion?
I
Okay.
just wanted to say thank you to both of those members. We updated the board on that. They are retiring, but their dates of retirement are after June 30th, and they could have held on that retirement, but this enabled us to do a better job of budget planning as well as hiring, and really appreciate them being such team players even up to the very end of their time here. So we're thankful for them for their service as well as their continued dedication to the district, even in retirement.
Thanks for that. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. And item 8C, to approve the memorandum of agreement by and between the Averill Park Central School District and the Averill Park Teachers Association regarding the early payout of retirees for BOE. Jackie, seconded by Samantha. All those in, or discussion?
Okay.
All those in favor? All right, passes unanimously, thank you. And 8D is motion, we're looking for a motion to approve the Frank L. Seymour Scholarship in the amount of $500, which will be awarded to an Averill Park High School senior entering college with a focus in the STEM field. The recipient will also be able to demonstrate a history of community service. Do I have a motion? Peter, seconded by Jackie. Discussion? Samantha?
I just wanted to say thank you to the state, the folks who made this happen, and it seemed like he was a lovely person, and every little bit counts, and this is the kind of thing that my husband, it was very personal. Right? My husband used little scholarships like this to get to his engineering degree, and you can go all over the world with something like this. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Samantha. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, on to item number 9. We have 2 resolutions. The first is to approve a bond resolution for the $28,527,000 capital project that was approved by the voters in October. Do I have a motion? Megan, seconded by Ann. Discussion?
I just want to point out how great it is to be moving forward with the process, because a lot of time and energy and effort and planning and then replanning and time and effort have gone into developing this, and I am really excited for the community to actually see it start to move in the direction of actually getting done, so.
Thank you. And this is just the bonding that allows us to move forward with the part of the process. Yeah, progress. All right, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? I thank you, passes unanimously. And 9B is to approve the creation of a board facilities committee. Do we have a motion? Samantha, seconded by Doug. Discussion.
I want to thank Doug and Jackie for stepping up.
And
Doug and Ann, sorry. Sorry, Doug and Ann. Jackie's like, no, not me. Doug and Ann for stepping up to participate with this committee. You know, it's just another layer of the work that goes into being involved, and it's appreciated by all of us, so thank you.
is there anything you wanted to say about the committee?
Just that we're excited to get this going. So something I think we've realized is as we went through the capital project process, the importance of having a broader audience and more involvement. We did a long planning process and that had a committee on it. That was certainly good and worthwhile, but typically those things are done when you have a project kind of in sight. What we want this committee to do is really kind of be a more continuous oversight of the facilities, do regular building walkthroughs, keep a good eye on what's going on, what needs to be improved. The honest answer is our current project really is just meeting the basics. It's the roofing, it's very key stuff, and we have more to be done in our building. And we need to kind of continue to engage in that and make sure that we're bringing many stakeholders to this. This will have board members on it, has our architect on it, our owner's rep, our assistant superintendent of business carries, lead the committee. And we want to make sure that we're just making this a priority as we go forward and keeping that engagement high as we build towards the next project, because it's really supposed to be a process of continuing to look and evaluate and analyze and not just done, periodically. So we really want to establish this and get this going. And thank you to the two folks who stepped up.
Definitely, thank you, Doug. Go ahead, Doug.
I look forward to serving on this committee in anticipation. I look forward to serving on this committee in anticipation of the approval of the resolution tonight. I'm asking the safety committee, which I'm also a member, board representative on that committee, to include this committee, the facilities committee, on the next agenda, which is in a couple of weeks. We're having a safety meeting, because I think some safety issues will probably come up, especially during a building project or as we're looking at some of the needs in each of the buildings, improvements. Safety issues will emerge, and I want to make sure that we address those as we assess the condition of the buildings.
Excellent. It's a great idea, for sure. Great, thank you, Doug. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Passes unanimously, thank you. That moves us to item number 10, our budget presentation.
All right, so we are in the midst of budget season and a little bit different. We've done quite a bit of meeting and discussion with the non-instructional side of the house and the instructional side of the house. Carrie, Kim, Matt, and I have met with our principals, our supervisors, as we try to figure out where we're headed, and will be a challenging year, of course. And what we asked Matt to do tonight was take a look at the instructional side. So what he's really doing for you here is summarizing the work that's been done up until this point and the needs that have been identified by the principals, by the directors, in terms of what is needed on the instructional side. By no means is this a list of everything we're going to be able to implement. That's the harder part. The easier part is identifying the needs, and we all know those. Certainly the people who are overseeing the buildings and the departments very much know what the needs are. So you're going to see a pretty comprehensive list. By no means will most of this be done, and probably even only a few things if we're lucky, based on where we're headed. But we wanted to present to you as part of the process what we're seeing right now, key areas that we would like to expand if we could in a perfect world. And if money was no object, these are the things that are kind of an all-inclusive list. So I'll tee it up for Matt as his wish list. And I don't know, if we're in a different setting. I don't know if you either want to turn around or actually go into the, well, I don't know what people are comfortable with, but whatever works for folks, give you an opportunity to shift and turn or whatever you can do.
Okay, so I kind of broke this up into two parts. The board had asked about an update on stimulus funding, so that's going to be the first part of the presentation. In addition, as required by the federal guidelines in terms of how we use the stimulus funds, we are asked to give periodic updates as well to solicit feedback. So this will kind of serve two purposes. You'll get that update, and it will also give us an update or an opportunity to get feedback from the community if they so choose to do so. The other part of it is what Jim just mentioned, which will be the budget request focused on the instructional program. So in terms of stimulus funding, just a few reminders. There are two funding sources that the school currently utilizes. Those two funding sources total $4.64 million. This is federal money that does have restrictions on how it can be used. It's not necessarily free open money. There are some strings attached in certain areas that we have to abide by. We are carefully considering how to use this funding. We want to really be careful of the ongoing costs, which I'll talk about in just a minute, versus one-time costs. And the funds must be expended by a specific date. The first fund is the affectionately known as GRISA, expires in September 30th of 2023, and ARP is a year later in 2024. The challenges with this kind of money is that it can create funding cliffs, and that's something we've been very wary of. You could certainly add a lot of personnel, the things that were being asked, quite honestly, out of this year's budget, those things requests. You could add using stimulus funding, but when that funding runs out, it creates a cliff, and you have to figure out ways to get that back into your budget. So we wanted to be very careful when we chose what we chose in this process of how we were going to spend the stimulus money to avoid as many cliffs as possible. They're not completely unavoidable. There are certainly some areas that we will have to maneuver through. We also dealt with the stimulus funding to support the budget challenges of last year. If you can remember, before the stimulus money came out, we were cutting staff. One specific area was AIS teachers, and we were able to use the stimulus money to reinstate those positions. They're being funded through stimulus, but it certainly does present a challenge going forward. Supplement versus supplant is a big term in state lingo in terms of wanting to support existing programs versus creating new things with new money. Again, that creates a cliff that makes it a challenge to keep going once that funding source runs out. We are already looking at how we can bring programs and personnel back into the budget versus potentially having to cut things when the funding is exhausted. So these are discussions that are happening, well in advance of the money expiring. And then again, looking at those one-time purchases, far easier to buy something once than have those ongoing expenses, whether it be people or program, that make it a little bit more of a challenge to bring into the budget. If you can remember back in, I think this was late June, early July, when we first presented this, there were 5 funding priorities that we focused on with our stimulus funds. Supporting academic growth was our way to really work towards what they were calling learning loss, how we were going to support our students that lacked that in-person classroom time over the past 2 years. We wanted to coordinate our social emotional learning efforts across the district. We know that the impacts of the pandemic were going to continue to be felt as we started the school year, so we wanted to increase our supports there. Promoting effective use of technology. We saw firsthand the importance of effective, efficient technology use in the classroom and what that would take to maintain that coming out of the pandemic. Developing our capacity of our instructional staff. There's a lot of new ways that we've learned about how teaching and learning can work, and we want to make sure we're providing professional development to our staff to keep those efforts going and also look for new ways, things that we hadn't thought possible before. So PD is a big part of how we're using this stimulus funding. And finally, the COVID logistics, things that have been ongoing for the last couple of years, and I'll talk a little bit about each one of these in a little more detail. The way that the 4.6 million broke out was like this on the pie chart. Well over 60 or close to 60%, well over 50% went to that student academic growth. A lot of people involved in our intervention supports, and then a smaller percentage to technology, COVID support, professional development, and SEO. So some of the things that we were using are 59% of our funding for supporting academic growth. We built a summer school program last year for K-8. We had one in 9-12, but did not have one K-8. So we created our Summer Blast program, which is a great way to get our students who had lost some critical instructional time to get them in over the summer to help not necessarily make up the gaps, but keep them going, sustaining where they were at so we didn't lose more. This will continue this summer as well. We're actually just started conversations before the break about our K-5 program, so we will be looking to keep that going using the stimulus funding. We had quite a bit of staff for intervention support. Again, that's K-8. So we had numerous people that were brought in to really help with reading and math support at critical times in our students' learning. We increased the speech staff, an increased speech need allowed us to add a 0.5 speech person to our staff. We're looking at a new universal screener, which is our way of being able to identify the needs and skills of our students in both ELA and math, and that's again for grades K through 8. That's critical when you use a universal screener. You're looking at your students against the population of the whole country, not just within your school, so you really get a feel for how are our kids doing compared to other kids. We currently have a tool that's not as effective, and we are looking at other options. We haven't selected anything yet, but we do have the money set aside to be able to move in a different direction. Instructional materials have been a wide array of things. Predominantly, it was a new ELA curriculum for our kindergarten, first and second grade. That was the culmination of a multi-year process. It also has allowed us to buy materials to provide, again, additional intervention support for AIS services for our elementary and middle school students. We brought back an old program, AMS Cares, that had been around years ago. It was reinstated. It's an after-school program that provides support for our middle school students who need that little encouragement, need that boost. They get real personalized support after school, working in small groups with teachers, helps with their homework, it helps with goal setting, helps with executive functioning, real critical middle school skills. So we'll be doing that for this year as well as 2 additional years with this funding. And lastly, we were able to add a needed special ed staff member at the elementary school to help those continuing needs that keep arising with our special ed population.
So those like AIS aides will kind of, they're just 2-year hired for 2 years.
Yeah, they're being funded this year and next year with the stimulus funding. Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Matt,
Yeah.
would you just explain this year and next year with stimulus funding, this payment or portions of this payment are reoccurring, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
What part of it? Is it a 4-year, is it a 4 million for both years? Is it
4-year is the total amount that we will be getting between the 2 funds. One is over a 3-year period, one's over a 4-year.
Yes, I was trying to make it clear.
Yep.
Thank you. But it's good to see that most of the money is going to student support services. I like that. And when it's included in technology, does that include hardware?
Yes, it will. Actually, that's a slide coming up.
Okay,
I'm going to bring the detail.
thank you.
Yes, Ann.
Talk about the 2 years, the 3 years.
Mhm.
Is this one of the funding cliffs that you speak of, like
So,
keep these positions going beyond the
Yeah,
stimulus?
so that's a great point. I was gonna jump in, I think it was Jesse's point, right? Like, are those AIS teachers? Yeah, I think you said, were they hired for 2 years? So just to be clear, they were put in the stimulus money, the pool of money for 2 years. But if you go back to where we were about a year ago, we were cutting some of those positions. So in an effort to not cut them, because we had not just the same level of need, we actually had an increased level of need because of what's happened. Those positions, instead of getting cut in some cases, were transferred into the separate pool of money. So that gets to your question about the funding cliff type of stuff, whereas we would have had to potentially lay off people last year, we were able to avoid the layoffs by this money. That's eventually going to come due. To Doug's point, that money is going to run out. Those positions are over in that separate pot of money. You either need to cut them or bring them in. So that's that's the funding cliff, AIS, hiring, shuffle, problem, dilemma that we're in the middle of right now.
And we did a lot of projections last year, trying to figure out, you don't know for sure when people are going to retire, when they're going to leave, but we did try to find potential landing spots for a number of these positions so that they would have a place to go. We've done that for some of them, but not all of them, certainly. Yes, ma'am.
In addition to the services for last year while we were, virtual, are these services also being allotted to students who lost time having been sick and, maybe struggling to come back into the fold?
Yeah, hold that thought. I'll show you that on a different slide.
Thank you.
Yep. So moving on to the next slice of the pie was our social emotional learning, which represents about 8% of the total funding. The primary expenditure in that category is our SEL staff. We brought on 2 SEL coordinators. Those are district-wide positions. They've been phenomenal this year at working in all of our buildings with staff to really start to integrate this work and not make it an extra thing, actually make it part of the culture of what we do. And they've just done an amazing job of moving great distances in a short amount of time, and really continue this. They're going to continue this effort into next year as well. So we will keep this ball rolling as long as we can. And again, in terms of a place to go, we do have the people that are serving that role. We have places for them to fall back to after the stimulus funding. So these are our 2 spots that we were very thoughtful about filling a need right now, but also making sure that we did have a place for them to end up down the road. Along with those 2 folks, they are 10-month employees, so we did set aside some money so they could do some planning work over the summer. We also recently utilized our SEL screener, Panorama. We started our first survey in January and February, and we'll continue that in the future as well. That was kind of to establish a baseline. But clearly down the road, we want to see that work that we're doing is effective, so we will resurvey the students to see what were areas of growth and areas still that need some improvement. And there's also a small amount of supplies to support some of the work that they're doing in their roles. Effective use of technology represents about 10% of the funding. This has helped support predominantly hardware. This is our classroom Chromebooks. If you remember, before the pandemic, we increased our local budget to allow us to go 1-to-1 in grades 5 through 12. So all of our students have Chromebooks that way. This additional funding has allowed us to really focus on the elementary level, where we had devices but did not have a replacement plan. And this has allowed us to replace our dated technology that has become more critical than ever. Really, quite honestly, saved our butts a few times when we were having to go virtual, and we ended up having to send every elementary student home with a device. Before this allocation, it would have been really challenging to send them home with a reliable device to allow them to do the virtual meets that they're doing with their teachers.
Matt?
Yeah.
Another quick question. So I get the impression that some of these expenditures are not just for new or add-on programs, but to replenish some of the programs that we already have in existence, which indicates to me that it might be some relief for the taxpayer.
At least for now, yeah. Take, for example, the Chromebooks. It's certainly going to allow us to replenish our supply. That buys us 4 or 5 years before we have to think about that again. That'll be a discussion 4 or 5 years down the road of how do we replace it at those times. So it certainly helped take care of an existing initiative that we were doing that we really were unable to create a local plan to support. So yeah, I would agree with that. Our classroom display technology is another good example of that, where we have very outdated interactive whiteboards in our classrooms that are no longer supported. So we'll be we did a little bit of work in our middle school this year, but there's been some delays with getting the technology because of supply issues. So we just started in the middle school. We'll be expanding that to the elementary next, so we can start to update some of that. So that's another case though where we're absolutely using stimulus funding to do something that we would have had to do locally. Our capacity for instructional staff, this is our professional development, represents 6% of our total funding. If you remember, another thing that we were discussing reducing last year before stimulus funding was our teacher leader positions. We were able to reinstate those positions, most of it back into the budget, but there were some that were not put back in the budget that we picked up through stimulus. So we're going to fund 5 of those positions for 2 years. We also created the teaching and learning cabinet right around the same time when we redefined the teacher leader role. We have 9 teachers working in the cabinet. They are stipend positions. We will have those funded for 3 years through this. They're doing some amazing work with looking at new and different ideas to bring forward to the district. And it's been really exciting working with that group. And lastly, professional development workshops and conferences. This is really ongoing. We did a great conference with Solution Tree. You've heard a lot from our principal presentations about professional learning communities. Solution Tree is the premier company in terms of supporting those efforts. So we were able to do a 3-day workshop with them over the summer, a virtual workshop, and we also brought a trainer in for 2 days. So it's work like that that we're going to continue to do to continue to support our staff to make sure that we are keeping up to date with current practices and really moving things forward. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. So along those lines, was there any stipulation within the funding to assist our educators, especially those who have been out ill for upwards of, 5 weeks, and, in terms of assisting them to be back up to speed also?
Can you, in terms of assisting, in terms of what do you?
Well, so that they're able to actually heal, in terms of, not feeling like they need to, drag themselves from a fever bed to make a lesson.
Yeah, nothing like stimulus, but certainly through our local budget, providing for subs and that kind of support, we absolutely have done and will continue to do. It's nothing additional in stimulus though that would be for them. And then lastly, representing 18% of the budget are our ongoing COVID-related logistics. We purchased storage containers to store a lot of the furniture that we couldn't put in rooms. We had alternative educational settings. You may have seen tents outside of the school. We also had virtual settings for our students that chose not to attend in person this year. There was a remote opportunity through our local BOCEs, so that allowed us to pay for those students to attend that. There was classroom furniture to allow for, not just for the social distancing aspects of things, but also really to start looking at some different ways that we can use space to change instruction. So we're getting into some, if you've seen some of the high school rooms, some different kinds of furniture to allow that to take place. So this was an opportunity to dig into some of that kind of work. We had support for quarantine students, and this is what you were asking about before, Megan. We were able to provide support for students before and after school. We were able to use funding to pay for that level of support for those kids. We had an ongoing laundry list of PPE equipment that Aaron maintained that we funded through this. We are in the process of adding a transportation attendance module to allow us to actually take attendance real time on the buses so that we know where all of our kids are when they get on, when they get off. And lastly, we were able to provide virtual special education services, something that sort of fell into our laps last summer, but was really critical for us. When a student is either quarantined or in isolation or is in a virtual program that has an IEP, we still have to provide those special ed services. It would have been really challenging to do that with existing staff, so we were able to utilize a staff member to do that and then fill her role here with a 1-year leave. So it really worked out for us to be able to keep doing that and provide those services. Just as an FYI for the community, we do have additional information on our funds on our website, averillpark.k12.ny.us/federal stimulus funds. And any public comments, feedback on our plan can be emailed to arpa@apcsd.org.
A quick thing, I think to your point, Doug, regarding tax levy and how to balance all stuff. I don't know what the future is going to present. In my mind, I view the federal stimulus money enabling us to do a lot of things that we would not have been able to do otherwise without raising taxes. So last year, we went below the tax cap. So we tried to offer some relief last year. So not only do we not have to cut, like those positions we just talked about, but some of the things like Matt mentioned, that we would not have been able to do otherwise, we were able to do. In some cases, it was catching up. In some cases, it was getting ahead. Like the Chromebook replacement plan, we needed to do that. It would have come out of general fund because it was one of the qualifying expenses. We're able to do that through this money. You know, starting a program like CARES at Algonquin, that was there back when I was principal there for a long time, was a budget cut over the dark days. We were able to bring it back. Wouldn't have been able to do that without the stimulus money. The professional development has been a line in our budget that's been cut for years and years and years to very little, I think at some point zero when I was in between when I was here and came back. We were able to do some of that stuff, like the work with Solution Tree to enhance the work that's going on with our learning teams. So it's part of, I think, it's enabled us to do stuff that we would not have been able to do. And we were able to last year do that in a way that we were able to provide the taxpayers a little bit of relief last year. I just get nervous or cautious or worried about future tax cap type stuff. We obviously want to keep it as low as possible. I just don't want to make any false promises. So.
Thank you. Matt, could you just explain just really briefly the transportation module, attendance module?
Sure.
How that might work when a student gets on the bus, they're considered in attendance?
Yeah, so the plan is to equip the buses with a hotspot, a cellular hotspot. So most areas of our district will get coverage, not all of them. And then there'll also be a small tablet on the bus. So when the student comes in, the bus driver can tap the name of the student, text them in. As long as there's a signal, it gets uploaded to central transportation on their server so they can actually see who's on the bus. If a call comes in, they'll know who's there and who isn't. If they don't have a cell signal, it holds it on the tablet until a signal is obtained, and then it uploads the information. So it'll be pretty close to real-time information of who's on buses.
And I assume the name of the students would be in the progression of when they're picked up, so it's easy.
Yeah, you can do that. I think you also do pictures with it too. So if you have a sub-driver, they can tell by the.
Are the drivers okay with this?
Mark has been requesting this, so I'm assuming he's chatted with his staff.
Not a word. Not a word. This is the first time I'm hearing it.
It was one of the things that we realized when we were doing the contact tracing, that we weren't necessarily well equipped, and as we started talking and asking around, a lot of districts already had it. So they were using this module to be able to carry that out. And then we started looking at what were the other benefits. And you can imagine, it just helps us tracking the students for a million reasons, kids getting on and off buses. So it's something we're looking to do, and it's in those infancy stages, but hopefully we can implement it.
And also, Mark has said that the tablets would allow, you can use it for GPS as well, because they'll have a hotspot, they can use something like Waze or Google Maps to be able to do wayfinding on trips. All right, so moving on to the budget request, and again, this came from a series of meetings in February with the principals and directors to ask about specifically related to their instructional needs, the staffing parts of their programs and buildings. As Jim mentioned, this is the request list. This is by no means what's going to happen. This is just a summary of everything that we heard from them presented to you. I broke it up into kind of the segments that we heard from. So at a district-wide level, there are two positions that were identified. The first one is really one that I think there's a long history here that far dates my history here. I've only been here 3 years. But from what I understand, our special ed program has taken on a lot of shapes and sizes over the last few years. And this continues in filling this need of trying to get the right size for the size district that we are. I did survey districts of similar size. I went within a 400 plus and 400 minus range and asked them about their structures. And we were only, out of 8 districts, we were one of 2 that did not have an assistant director. We previously did just a couple of years ago. We did a study, thought we may not need it. We're finding that the need is still pretty great. Our program is large. We have a large percentage of students that have been identified. So we're just seeing this as continuing to be an area of concern for us that we want to address by making sure we have the right management and coordination efforts in place. We also had a request for a strings teacher. This would be for all buildings. throughout the district. This is really an effort to reinstate something that was once in existence before, as Jim called it, the dark times where a lot of the department was cut back. Some of it has come back, but not fully. This would help get us there by having a person dedicated to the strings program. At the K-5 level, it really should be and/or. All the buildings said, we're in the need for really psychologists and/or social worker. This student support piece is continuing to be a huge need for us. Again, that was part of the survey that I did with the schools, asking what their structures were like. We do show that we are a little bit lower than those schools in terms of this level of support for both the social psychologist and/or social worker. We had a request for 2 special education teachers at Poston Kill and Miller Hill. This is really in an effort to move to a model known as co-teaching, where we would have a special ed teacher dedicated to a classroom at each grade level. It's really the highest level of support, in-class support that we could provide. It comes at a cost. Obviously, you need to staff up to do that. So there would be a tremendous consideration to whether or not we could sustain a program like this. We currently run a consultant teacher model, which allows a special ed teacher to push in at different points in the day versus co-teaching, which would be for the full day. At our high school level, we have, as you might be aware, we utilize something known as a 7-period stipend. This allows for teachers to, in exchange for give up a prep period, to be able to teach another course, another section of a course, or another elective. There's a cost to doing that. We're finding it's challenging to schedule some of our students into our music program. We've seen our music numbers dip. Part of it is because of conflicts between other courses that they want to take and the music program. So at the instrumental side of things, the teacher is very interested in doing a before-school music program that will allow students to be able to access the music program outside of the school day. So that would come at a cost to the district to do that. But we think the benefits for giving kids another opportunity to engage in our music program would be tremendous. There's a driver's education instructor proposal that was given to us by Heath. This is something he's tried doing for a number of years. So it's a summer program, so it's a smaller cost and something that we think would benefit our students greatly. The next 3 all represent a 1.0 FTE. The business teacher is a position that we don't currently have. We have no high school business program, which is fairly unusual for a school our size. So it would, we'd be looking to actually start a program or restart a program. We did have business teachers a number of years ago. The technology teacher and art teacher are really in a response to demand in both of those programs. Both programs have teachers teaching on a 7th assignment currently. In some cases, multiple teachers teaching on a 7th assignment. Which shows you that we're struggling meeting the needs of all the students because we're having to have teachers give up prep time in exchange for teaching an extra period. So this would potentially alleviate that concern.
Can you explain for the benefit of the audience and anybody watching at home what that means to be on a 7th assignment
Sure.
versus the 7th period stipend analogy?
They're essentially the 7th assignment is that 7th period. So what I described for music is what we're already doing in our tech department and in our art department.
Are those teachers doing that for free?
No.
Or they're receiving a stipend?
Yeah, they're already getting the stipend. So we are already paying stipends. This would be moving from a stipend to an actual additional teacher, so that we would no longer be paying the stipends, but we would be adding a teacher to that department to pick up all those different 7th assignments that are currently being utilized.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Sam?
So does that mean that would kind of move that subject into the regular school day, or does it still?
Yeah.
And then, is the problem, like, are we just like offering so many electives that there's just so much, like, the students can't come take what they want to take because they want to take everything?
There's a very diverse opportunities for students, and we do try to give kids a lot of different opportunities, particularly as they get into the upper high school and there's opportunity to take more electives. There certainly are a lot of opportunities there. We're not running class sizes of 6 to 8. These are fairly large classes too, so it's not like we're just running a lot of these smaller electives. They're actually fairly well subscribed. Admittedly, in technology and art, there are caps on how many kids you can put in just because of space and equipment and materials. But those are typically areas that are very well subscribed by all of our students.
And then sort of that transition either to the seventh period segment or to the, from the seventh period to the full is kind of based on the demand that you guys receive.
Yep.
Is
Yeah,
responsible.
class selection starts right around this time. And so within about 6 weeks or so, Heath will have a pretty good idea of what kids are interested in and how many sections he might need of different courses. And did you have a question?
Different tasks?
On the K, back up to K5,
Mhm.
the psychologist, social worker, I seem to recall there was a psychologist at Miller Hill. Is there no,
Yes.
what is the situation currently with those positions at the elementary
Yeah,
school?
at the elementary, so at West Ham Lake and Poston Hill, we have a psychologist and a counselor. At Miller Hill, we have 2 psychologists and no counselor. So we do currently have psychologists. This would be an additional psychologist to the ones we have here.
Okay. And I guess I'm thick because I don't, I do understand when you talk about seventh period, I do understand that there's additional time that's needed. I'm just really having trouble with the whole concept, maybe because I just don't understand it, but I do know like when my kids, had to leave class for lessons, is that what you're talking about? When you say like they're not able to do music and their regular classes, or I'm not really.
So from what we understand from the music department, they're not taking music because the time at which perhaps the instrumental band, jazz band is meeting, there could be an AP course that they're enrolled in. So when they have to choose between the two, they're likely to choose the AP
So
course.
what difference would a position or a stipend make in that?
So the state stipend would allow the teacher to offer that before the school day starts. It's something we've already been doing with our robotics program. We have a teacher that comes in before school to run robotics because it was a similar issue with kids that were interested in robotics. We're also interested in a lot of other courses during the day and weren't able to fit it into their schedule during the day, but we're willing to come outside of the day to do it.
Why is it normally just 6 periods? I don't even know where the number 7 comes from. I never even got to AKB day.
I think that what we've seen, technology is a really good example. You have very strong teachers and very strong programs, and that attracts kids, right? So with technology, again, it's been going on for a very long time here. Those kids with the robotics program, they tend to be kids who take a pretty full schedule, right? So in order to get them to course, it's hard to get them to course during the regular school day. So this is a solution, again, predates Matt and I, that we've been doing for a while, and it was kind of like a win-win situation. You had a teacher who was willing to do it, and you had students who were willing to come in early, and they were still getting kind of that full course load. Back when robotics was sort of newer and not as maybe mainstream as it is now, but it's worked well, so we kept doing it. And it's, in fact, for years, the board did an MOA every year. We eventually just made that so it renewed automatically, unless either party agreed to stop it. So it's kind of just something that's been institutionalized. The music side of that is sort of taking that same model. So it's not just like general music, it's, I can't remember offhand.
Yeah, it's a specific group.
It's a specific ensemble
Jazz.
group. I think
Yeah.
it's jazz, right?
I do recall that because my kids could not be in jazz band because of the AP course. Yeah.
Right. So you got someone,
Right.
right, so you got, a very, very good teacher, a very good program, a lot of students want to take it, and it's hard for them to fit that into the thing. So the thought there, again, if it's mutually agreeable, is, hey, there's an opportunity to do there what we're doing in robotics, but because then you're outside of the regular day, you obviously have to pay for that time. So that's
Thank you.
that's sort of our,
No, it's okay.
My question was already somewhat asked by Ann. I was just asking about the seventh period for the music department. I was wondering if that is when, since I just heard of the jazz band, if that is when the jazz band is going to meet, or if that was for lessons, because I know kids get pulled for lessons throughout the school day. So I was curious about that, and if that was when the jazz band was going to meet, Is that required that the parents obviously have to get them to school for that?
Yeah, I believe that's how it works with robotics, is that correct, Jim? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not for lesson time, it's actually for course time. And I believe that part of that deal is that if you register for that course, you have to go get yourself here.
I have just a clarification. The two special education teachers at PES, and is that 2 per building?
Yes.
So it's total
It's
of
4.
4 FTEs?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
And that's a model Matt kind of mentioned, like, what we originally were looking to do was move to a different model, from consultant teacher to the integrated co-teaching model. Most districts at this point are doing the integrated co-teaching. It's definitely the newer way of doing things. We're kind of outdated, to be honest. We're kind of behind the times. The issue with it is it requires more FTE. There's no way to do it and do it properly without more bodies. For us, we're talking about a total of somewhere between 5 and 6 teachers over all 3 buildings. So the original thought was that obviously we can't add that in 1 year. Is there a way to get there and phase that in? So there's all sorts of options. There's either not doing it, or there's doing it but doing 1 building, or doing it 2 buildings, or doing it all 3 buildings. It's a significant financial cost. I mean, if you're talking 6 teachers, that's a lot of money. So whether or not we can get there or not, again, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about the need. These are the things that we've talked about. And in many cases, not the first time. In some cases, the business program, I believe, went away when I was here as a principal at Averill. I think, I'm pretty sure it was around that time. So some of these things have been very long-standing, others much more recent, but things that we would, again, perfect world, be able to address and solve. They all have a identified need and all have a direct impact on students, even like the assistant director position, that's impacting how we're providing services, so.
So to close, there's really kind of where we're at for next steps, specific to instruction. We're going to continue to look at areas for attrition based on retirements. So we showed you what we needed. Maybe there's areas where there's less than need, and we might be able to recognize some savings there. We're looking.
I'm gonna interrupt that again.
Yeah.
So that first bullet, since I've been back, just as year 5, if you remember on every budget presentation, the ones that we kind of do at the end to wrap it up, we always have the bullet that says something along the lines of, in the face of decreasing enrollment, the district will continue to look to reduce through attrition where possible. So wherever we can have someone retire and not rehire, that's what we do. And we have done now, again, I can only speak specifically about the last 5 budgets. The issue is that's where you get your bang for your buck in savings. We've also trimmed most of those positions. So there's not a lot of attrition that's available without a little bit, or in some cases, a lot of it hurt. So we've had some stuff with the decreasing enrollment. We've been able to say, okay, hey, that teacher in that department retired, we can reduce and still class size wise be okay, right? Now we're getting to the point where attrition is very challenging to do. There's not a lot out there. So it's a great way to cut because you don't have to let someone go, but you can't not replace an elementary teacher and have class size go to 35, right? You got to replace those. You know what I mean? There's a certain level where you just can't replace. You got to replace. So, yep.
I have a question to that end, because there have been a lot of retirements this year. We're losing a lot of really valuable long-term teachers and staff. So how many of those positions are we looking to bring in new people?
Great question. Stay tuned. That's the level that we're starting to get to now, right? Yep. No, in terms of the process, so you're exactly right. And this was in those meetings with people, this is where we are. Now we have to start to sharpen the pencil, right? Obviously, if we went to Carrie and said, build all those positions into the budget, she would probably run out the door, right? We can't do it. So now you got to start looking and go, okay, well, where can we reduce? That's what I'm saying. It gets very difficult. If, again, an elementary teacher retires, we don't have class sizes that are 15 kids in elementary where you go, oh wait, that 3rd grade teacher at that building retired, we can just go with 2 teachers and 2 sections in that building. Our numbers aren't there. we're at a comfortable level. If we go from we're at 3 sections in all buildings and all grade levels. If you go down to 2 sections, you're going to have vastly increased, I would say, not acceptable class sizes. Middle school and high school, a little bit different. It's not quite, you don't take the number of students divided by teachers, but you start losing electives, you start losing core programs, you start chipping away at the academic program you're offering to kids when you get to a certain level, and we're getting closer to that now. So it's something that, it's a great question, and that's one of those things that kind of keeps you up at night, trying to figure out where can you do that easily with as least little hurt as possible. So.
And speaking of keeping you up at night, we're looking at how we bring back some of the staff that we showed you in stimulus funding. So that's discussion that happens, as I mentioned earlier, sooner. We don't want to wait till the last minute for that, so we're already kind of thinking about planning that out. Replacing staff where necessary.
I'm gonna interrupt that again.
You want to
You're doing a great job. But that stimulus part is so important, right? Because Matt put together, and Michael, when he was here, this plan, but you're assuming that you can bring these people back when people retire, or you're looking and you're hoping. But that's kind of a very gray area. And if we don't have a way to bring people back, then you're looking at layoffs when this money runs out. And as you saw from the AIS people, I don't think you could look at our AIS staff and say, oh, wow, Averill Park, way too many AIS teachers. We're not overstaffed. So to reduce them would reduce the impact on student learning. So that's it. I'm not going to interrupt that.
Sure. So I get to the next bullet. Replace staff where necessary. As Jim said, take for example, an elementary teacher that retires. Right now, we're at the minimum where we need to be in order to keep our class sizes at an appropriate level. So we are going to have to replace where necessary. That list we just showed you, we'll add where appropriate, where we can afford, where it makes sense. That's a request list, a wish list. It's not the final list, so we'll have those discussions. And then finally, reduce staff if needed. That's certainly not something that we want to explore first. We want to explore all the other avenues before we go there, but that's obviously something that stays on the list if we need to do it. Jim, any final thoughts?
Great job.
Any last questions? Thank you.
I have one comment or question. Would it be possible to do a tiered approach as far as level and importance with a budget dollar amount?
I think that's traditionally what we've done, Jim. And
you were like Megan's question. That's the next step, and that's what we've already kind of sketched that out in terms of that list you saw. We started to put priorities next to them so that we can get to what we said to the administrators when we met last week before break. The one thing we didn't ask you for is cuts. So we asked you for your needs. We don't want to get there, as Matt said. We're hoping we don't have a second meeting where we say, hey, we need cuts. I was here when Joe called and said, hey, Jim, we need 15 FTE cuts from the middle school. Like, those aren't things that you want to do in terms of an exercise. So we're not there by any means, but we do need to go through that list of needs and prioritize, and that's what we're doing now with the administrators. Based on the numbers that come back with Carrie, what can we afford, and then what is kind of level one, what's first in, what's last in. Absolutely.
Thank you for all your good thinking around this, and certainly a lot to consider when you're building it back first. So, all right, thank you, Matt. That brings us to item number 11, the public comment period, open public comment period. Those wishing to address the board are asked to complete the request form. And I have resolutions you have to give it to. Okay. So that brings us to board member reports. Jackie.
I just wanted to reiterate what was said before and wish all the retirees well. Congratulations to them. And again, thank the off-Broadway players for the donation for the lighting system. thank you for everyone for coming and attending the board meeting and being involved and being here to listen.
Doug?
I already mentioned what I wanted to mention about the safety meeting coming up and the facilities committee. I think both are very valuable committees, and I look forward to both of those meetings.
I think that's a great idea, though. Make sure they're proud.
Yes.
Is that all? Okay. Samantha?
In a couple things, if that's okay. Just with the basketball game coming up, just wanted to share something that I work with somebody who is very entrenched in the New York basketball environment. She was a basketball player herself when she was younger, when she was going through school and achieved quite a high level of play. And she said something to me when we were talking about, she lives up in Albany, and she's going to be at the community college supporting her team, but she said that she has a lot of respect for the AP school district's basketball program, especially when comparing it with our kind of peers, that it is a very, I don't love this word, but like a holistic program. It's not, they're not moving ringers or anything. She came from a very, very competitive place. That got very competitive and kind of a little cutthroat after she left. She had excellent coaches and a lot of integrity in her basketball program. And she sees that, like when the teams that she supports play with AP, it's a really good program to see. The students are really, it's a really respectful, high quality game with a lot of integrity. And so she said she always likes to see AP do almost as well as her team. So we'll see how it goes on Wednesday. Hopefully I can, well, I'm sure my kids will stay awake because it needs to. So that was one thing. I just wanted to from what I've seen too, that just our basketball program, our girls, wish them all the luck on Wednesday. I also just want to say that I just am very grateful for this school district. What's been going on in Eastern Europe has been affecting me a lot. That's my family from way back when. Nobody's in harm's way now, but it really throws into kind of stark relief what we have here, how we can disagree or agree, even passionately, and be each other's neighbors and wave, when the bus goes by, and help each other out and kind of come together kind of after. And I don't know if this is okay, Jesse, something if we did get, if I can mention Vanessa's letter, is that okay? Or should I zip it on them? Just one of the parents who's often here, who's not here today, she kind of took the words out of my mouth in sharing with us. And it's, just really like, kind of standing and be kind to each other. And that as we kind of move forward with whatever happens on Wednesday, my kids don't know they're going to. Just that, Vanessa's asking us to make sure that we talk to your kids and that we're all respectful whatever anybody chooses. And that's what I've seen so far. And I'm just grateful to be in the AP school district. And, there's no phones and it's not scary. And we can kind of have this democracy and hold on to it. And I appreciate it. Thanks for being here, guys. Everybody stay safe. That's all.
Thank you, Samantha.
No worries on this.
Megan?
Thanks, Jesse. So I did something that I have not done before, but given the light of recent situations, I wanted to make sure that everything that I wanted to get said, got said. So I prepared it. And so I spent quite a bit of time going over what I felt needed to be conveyed from all different aspects of the community, feedback that I've gotten from different areas. And so I wrote this, and I'll share it with you. I joined the board with Sam in July 2019. COVID feels forever ago. COVID hit and became an emergency in March 2020. So that was the extent of my board experience prior to all hell breaking loose. I have come to loathe the word unprecedented because while it is completely appropriate for this impossible situation we've been living, there are no rules, no guidelines, no playbook for how the school district or we as a Board of Education were supposed to respond. The Averill Park Central School District has suffered tragedy during this time. We have students who have lost parents, caregivers, grandparents. We lost a student, may she rest in peace. We have seen the failure of leadership, in my opinion, at the state and county levels, and I am extremely grateful, and I feel we should be considering ourselves lucky to have Dr. Franchini, who stepped up in countless ways to help us through this. It has been truly disheartening to see the deep divide within the community. In areas where we should have been able to support each other, we have only grown further apart. As a board, these meetings are structured with the purpose of public transparency. These meetings, like all other aspects of board governance, are structured with rules and regulations. And the public comment periods are set up for one speaker at a time to be spoken into the microphone for the purposes of documenting the comments. We are here to reach consensus. There was an article recently in a publication that we get as board members that discussed the importance of consensus among school board members in order to remain productive. Quoting the article, it said, "Consensus is not the same as everyone agrees. Consensus is achieved, quote, when all members understand the issue and the rationale for the decision that was made, and the dissenters accept and support the decision of the majority." The article was primarily regarding how members of boards address each other. However, I see it bigger. Yes, members of the board need to find consensus. We don't always agree with how everything should move forward, not 100%, sometimes we do. But on a bigger level, the Board of Education as one body seeks consensus with the community. The only way that we find a way forward is understanding that we are all here for the same common purpose, based on the same common value system which begins with every student every day. If we could just remember that. Beyond that base foundation, there are so many different perspectives to consider. For the audience members here tonight, I see you, I've heard you, and I accept your perspective. As a member of the audience, you have the autonomy to only consider your own perspective. As a member of this board, we are required to consider all perspectives involved. Those perspectives are an Averill Park High School student currently suffering long COVID, unable to return to their normal activities, unable to effectively participate in their learning. The parents of this student help us to resolve the medical symptoms and settle with the extra costs associated with the long list of new doctor's appointments, expenses in the thousands. The other perspectives, a community physician who is also an Averill Park parent who continues to be concerned about infection rates. Our teachers and our staff who are high risk for severe outcomes or who have a family member at home who is high risk. These educators have been met with disregard by some, and recently it's turned to scorn and disrespect by others. If you're paying attention, you might have noticed how many retirements we've seen this year. Students who may be in perfect health, but who have a parent, sibling, household member at home who they worry about bringing home this virus to inadvertently. And students with chronic underlying conditions who are high risk for severe outcomes and have been met with a community who treats their safety as optional. At least it appears that way to them. It should not go unsaid the potential mental health implications for these students, both from the apathy to their danger and the trauma of being required to attend an environment where they don't feel safe. These are not my perspectives. These are the realities of community members who are not able to be here to speak for themselves. As a board, we represent them and you. Students with asthma, cystic fibrosis, type 1 diabetes, epilepsy, blood disorders, and compromised immune systems related to surviving childhood cancer. Every student, every day is all of them, not just mine and not just yours. When I decided to run for the board, it was for many reasons, not just one. The desire to advocate on behalf of the district for funding equity from the state. I would much prefer to discuss this unreasonable request for a fully electric bus fleet with no source of funding in sight. I don't know where the hell that's coming from, but we can't talk about that because we're talking about this. Supporting our special education initiatives, because I am so grateful for the services my own child was receiving and wanted to donate my time to give back to them. Offering perspective on safety and infrastructure issues. And beyond all of that, even knowing how hard our district works on behalf of the kids, there were 2 additional reasons I decided to run for this board. I didn't see the level of community interaction I thought there could be, and I was hearing from some students they felt underrepresented. In accepting this responsibility, I acknowledge sacrificing some of my own autonomy, not having the privilege to speak only about my own perspective. But I made a promise to speak up and speak out on behalf of the marginalized, the quiet voices, our students of color, our students of wealth or of poverty, our LGBTQ and our non-binary students, our special education students, and during this pandemic, students who are of the vulnerable population and their families. Every student, every day. We may not agree on this issue, we may not agree on other issues, and we may agree on some things down the line. There could come a time when your voice is the quiet voice needing to be carried, and I would speak for you too. I will speak plainly. I won't be threatened. I won't be bullied or browbeaten, and I will never apologize for keeping a promise. If the day should come where the majority community casts their vote and passes this responsibility to another person, the marginalized will always know they had a voice in this body. I hope whoever replaces me understands the balance needed, the time commitment, a lot of time, and the necessity to represent all perspectives, because the goal is every student, every day, and that's why I'm here. I appreciate the opportunity to serve on the Board of Education, and that's my board report.
Thank you, Megan. Ann?
She should have gone last. I'm supposed to follow that. I just wanted to say, as neatly as it sounds now, that I appreciate working on the facilities committee. I look forward to it. I enjoy those kinds of things, and I hope that my unflexible schedule isn't too much of a burden. I will work my best to work it in with you folks and understand that if you can't work around me, I'm okay with that. But I'm looking forward to being a part of that. And for some reason, I'm interested in buildings and costs, and that's what I do in my job. And, I also want to, I didn't say so when we had comments, but I want to thank the OBP for their donation. Their very generous donation toward the lighting project. And I think that's all. So thank you.
Thanks, Ann.
I'll be brief. It's been a long and challenging 2 years, and I see now that there is some relief in sight with the decreased rates of hospitalization regarding COVID. It's not just related to masks, it's related to health and people dying. So I'm looking forward to better days ahead and letting the board get back to the business at hand of running the school district. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. I also wanted to address, because the mask, the resolution we removed from the agenda because we were just following the guidelines, but I did want to let folks know, we're continuing to work through this global pandemic. It's not over. There's so much information available, information from experts, information from research, as well as personal accounts. Some of that information is trustworthy, some of it maybe not so trustworthy. But as a board member, we have to work through all this information and accounts and people's personal experiences as well as search for additional information for ourselves to be able to make decisions when necessary about what's best for the entire district. These decisions were based on the information as well as the oath we all took as board members to support New York State laws. And that's my responsibility as a board member, and I take that very seriously. And I do support the lifting of the New York State mandate, and I think that it's good that we'll be able to move forward. But I also recognize that COVID is not gone. I do understand that metrics may change, and therefore I would support any future federal or state mask mandate that would help keep our community safe, as I believe the mandates are there to protect our community. I recognize that we all have individual rights, and I have individual rights too, but those individual rights are not greater than my responsibility as a community member, a responsibility for us to take care of each other to keep our community strong. And I do appreciate all the constructive information and feedback that the board has been receiving, whether it's during the public comment periods of the board meetings or through email. Please know that we do listen. And I do hope that we can all move forward together to be supportive of each other as the community is, no matter what the personal choices that there are to come. So thank you, everyone. All right, that is end of board member reports. On to item number 13. We have need for executive session. We need to move to executive session to discuss collective negotiations under the Taylor law.
I make a motion.
Megan makes a motion and seconded. All those in favor? Thank you, everyone, for coming. We do not have need to re-adjourn when our executive session is over. I hope you have a good night.